Good day, and welcome to the CBI webinar on exporting recycled fashion to Europe. Very nice of you to join us here in this online meeting today. So my name is Frans Tilser, and today I speak on behalf of CBI, the Center for the Promotion of Trade with Developing Countries. First, some practicalities. We can't see or hear you. If you have any questions during the presentation, you can post them in the question tab and we will try to answer them. And also at the end of the webinar, there'll be a live Q&A session. This session will be recorded for reviewing and sharing later on. And we would also like to ask you to please complete our short survey at the end of the webinar. So, as I said, speaking on behalf of CBI, today we encourage exports of value-added products to Europe and to local regions as well. And CBI's ultimate goal is to support the global transition towards inclusive and sustainable economies. You may know us from our coaching projects that we do in several countries worldwide, our online fact sheets and about exporting to Europe, and our webinars, of which this is one. And today we will hear about interesting developments in the European market for recycled fashion. So let me introduce our speakers. First, our expert Kasia Hartwig, Consulting Director at Embrain, will tell you all about the European market for recycled fashion and what recycled fashion really is. And then I myself will tell you very briefly about the role of the EU and national governments in Europe in driving demand for recycled garments and textiles. Subsequently, we have Giovanni Beatrice, creative fashion entrepreneur at Forward in Fashion, and he will tell us all about opportunities in the market for recycled fashion. And then finally, our guest expert, Rachel Kannegieter, consultant and business coach at Rethink Rebels, will explain how to measure impact in your supply chain. So as I said, you can pose questions in the questions tab during the presentation, and at the end of the webinar, we hope to have a quick live Q&A session. So without further ado, I would like to give the word to Kasia Hartwig.
Thank you, Frans. So as Frans briefly mentioned, I will talk about the European market for recycled fashion, going a little bit into definitions and what recycled fashion is, as well as the statistics that we currently have on it. So very generally speaking, recycled fashion is a niche market currently, but it definitely has increasing potential for exporters from the developing countries. In 2018, the EU adopted a new strategy on plastics and a new circular economy package that will ensure that textiles are collected separately in all member states by 2025 at the latest. Generally, it is expected that the regulation in the EU will become increasingly stringent over the next years in order to comply with the aim of limiting the environmental footprint of fashion. So you will see, we already see, and we will see in the future more and more companies that will be exploring circular models, both to comply with the regulations, but also to appeal to the EU consumers who are increasingly environmentally conscious and oriented towards sustainability. And we'll see more efforts for general efforts towards circular fashion in order to reduce waste to a minimum, to keep materials in the consumption and production loop as long as possible. So this is what happens in circular models. You have materials that are collected and reused whenever possible. They're turned into new fabrics and garments with help of different recycling technologies. In order for this to happen to possible, clothes need to be designed to have multiple life cycles. So they have to be more durable and made of materials that are tailored to the recyclable use, so to say, but also to have maybe timeless styles and designs suitable for disassembly. So the environmental impact of reduction when using recycled fibers is quite high. In some pilot projects with jeans manufacturers, we've seen that energy savings of recycled fiber compared to virgin fibers were 53%, while the water savings amounted to 99% and chemical savings were up to 88%. So the European Union is one of the major textile markets in the world. the value of global textile industry in general, comprising clothing as well as furniture and mattress materials, linens, draperies, cleaning materials, leisure equipment, and many other items, is currently estimated at 917 billion euros. And every year worldwide, there's about 80 billion garments that are being produced. Today, an average person buys 60% more items each year and keeps them for half as long as they did 15 years ago, generating a huge amount of waste. In terms of Europe, there's about 16 million tons of textile municipal solid waste that is being generated. These are the statistics for 2015. And the amount of textile waste has doubled over the last 20 years. So there's an increasing tendency in producing textile waste due to the growing consumption. So what happens to this waste? So once in a landfill, natural fibers can take hundreds of years to decompose and may release methane and CO2 into the atmosphere. On the other hand, synthetic materials are not designed to decompose. They may release toxic substances into groundwater and the surrounding soil. So due to this, to the increasing textile consumption trends, and the knowledge that we have about the impact on the environment, textile recycling is becoming increasingly important in Europe and will continue to be one of the key issues driving the apparel industry. In terms of the recycling statistics, so 50% in the EU, only about 50% of collected textiles are reused. This means, for example, being exported to other countries as they are, and about 50% are recycled, of which only 1% is made into new clothes. Approximately 35% of donated clothing is made into industrial rags. In the end, only 15% of consumer-used clothing is recycled. On the other hand, more than 75% of pre-used clothing is recycled by the manufacturers. So these are still relatively low statistics, and this results in losses to the economy and to the manufacturers. This represents a loss in total, a loss of more than $100 billion worth of materials each year, which are also compounded by the high cost of textile waste disposal. So textile recycling and upcycling are potentially beneficial activities both from an environmental, social, and economic point of view. They reduce the use of virgin fibers, reduce the consumption of energy and water. They help avoid pollution and lessen the demand for dyes. Here we have a table that shows us the textile waste and the 10-year growth and vis-a-vis apparel imports of the major European countries. So again, what we see is that the biggest European markets for fashion and recycled apparel kind of correspond to the biggest producers of textile waste. So the biggest European markets would be Germany, the Netherlands, France, the UK, Spain, and Italy. And these are also there in top of textile waste producers. There are no estimates with regards to the value of demand for recycled apparel, but the share of the EU population that is concerned with issues of sustainability and who weighs those issues in their apparel purchases is approximately 37.5% and growing. In theory, if the recycled fashion strategies gain in force and are appropriately advertised to the public, the EU import market for recycled apparel will be worth, or is estimated to be worth, at least 63.2 billion euros. This is just for Europe, EU alone. So a little bit about the different definitions and processes. On a very general level, we distinguish between recycling and upcycling processes. The textile recycling would refer to the process by which old clothing and other textiles are recovered for reuse or material recovery. So usually this would be, those textiles would be generated from 3 primary sources. The first one would be the post-consumer, so including garments, upholstery, and others that have been used by consumers. The second one would be the pre-consumer, including scrap created as a byproduct from yarn and fabric manufacturing. And the final is the post-industrial scrap textiles from other industries. While textile recycling is focused on recovering materials from waste and reuse, for reuse, remanufacturing, or reprocessing, Upcycling, on the other hand, is a form of recycling, which turns the waste material or unwanted items into something that is of a better quality and higher value product. In terms of the different textile recycling processes, the very basic necessary steps in the textile recycling process involve the donation, collection, sorting, and processing of textiles. So this could be pooling, shredding, cleaning, mixing, respinning, followed by a subsequent transportation to end users of used garments. And then the process of recycling natural textiles would include the sorting of materials by type and color, which reduce the need for re-dyeing the fabric, thus saving energy and avoiding pollution. The textiles are also pulled into fibers and shredded, sometimes mixed with other fibers depending on the end use of the yarn. The yarn is then cleaned, mixed through a carding process, respun, and ready for subsequent use in weaving or knitting. Some fibers, instead of being respun, get compressed for use as textile filling. Then the process of recycling polyester-based textiles is somewhat different. It involves shredding garments and granulating them into polyester chips, and those are subsequently melted and used to create new fibers for use in new polyester fabrics. There are some challenges in the textile recycling process. They mainly have to do with the technologies and capabilities. So at the moment, the recycling's potential is still not fully realized because there is a lack of proper technologies, particularly when it comes to sorting the collected clothing, separated blended fibers, separating fibers from chemicals, including color during recycling, and also establishing which chemicals were used in the production in the first place. The technological challenges mean that full recycling of clothing into new fibers is still far from commercially viable. But on the other hand, we also have some successes. So there are already technologies for chemical recycling that produce virgin fibers of a high quality and this is available for polyester and nylon. And they're slowly becoming available, and they're not yet fully economically viable for cotton and blends. There's a number of companies that specialize in organizing the recycling initiatives and otherwise supporting the recycling of textiles. So some examples here is the ICO. It's a Swiss solution provider with recycling expertise in delivering innovative recycling opportunities. They have in the past partnered with H&M to support its Bring It fashion collection campaign. So this company collects discarded shoes, belts, bags, clothing from people and has collection points all over Europe. They work with approximately 60 retail partners, including the North Face, Levi's, Forever 21, Intimissimi, Reno, Adler, CNA, and Esprit. And they're in charge of organizing the transport, the sorting, and the recycling of donated textiles, providing the infrastructure for raw materials to go into a closed-loop manufacturing cycle. There are other companies that work on developing more sustainable fiber mixes and materials, such as lyocell and tencel, which are then further used in the production of clothes and the production of denim, underwear, casual wear, and towels. Lyocell can also be blended with a variety of other fibers, such as silk, cotton, polyester, linen, nylon, and wool. So one of such companies would be Lenzing Group. They are producing the Refibra branded lyocell, which is using cotton scraps from the value chain. So in general, there's a push towards using safer and healthier material inputs that would allow for recycling, as well as to avoid negative impacts during the production, use, and after use phases. There are other companies that actually made recycling and sustainability a part of their brand's DNA. So their main kind of operation modi are very much connected to recycling and sustainability. Here are some examples. So, for example, you have 4 Days. It's a startup which has a closed-loop fashion system. They're endlessly recycling materials. They're 100% organic T-shirts, tank tops, or sweatshirts cost $38, and they come with a lifetime membership. So if it ever needs to be replaced, it costs the member $8. The returned items are recycled all the time, so ad infinitum. There's ABCH, which produces 99% compostable clothing, which also has a recycling program that allows the customer to return their used clothes to be resold, remade into new pieces, or have the raw materials recovered via cellulose recycling. Mud jeans has between 23 and 40% recycled denim in each pair. And they're planning to launch their first 100% recycled cotton pair of jeans in 2020. That was the plan. The company collects old jeans and recycles them for second use. Tailor Stitch Menswear makes garments from 95% recycled cotton along with pre-used merino wool and industrial hemp. They collect worn-out clothing through their Vestige program, where the pieces are cleaned and repaired or turned into new pieces to be resold. There's Allbirds that make footwear from 100% recycled materials, including sheep's wool, recycled cardboards and plastic, and castor bean oil. Rothy's uses recycled plastic to make shoes for women. Recover brands use all kinds of recycled materials to make their products, including everything from cotton swept off the factory floor to polyester made from recycled plastic barrels and soda bottles. Cotopaxi uses sustainable llama wool and what would be discarded fabric, and Looped Works sells bags and accessories made from recycled materials. Of course, there are many more companies that are active in recycling and sustainability and kind of input this into their company's brands. In terms of your mainstream apparel companies, we see that they're increasingly also investigating circular fashion models. So this includes recycling and upcycling of textiles, but also, looking at clothing rentals, resale, and general upcycling. Yeah. So these models typically lengthen the product life cycles and improve sustainability. Clothing rentals are offered by companies like Rent the Runway, Mud Jeans, and Chibo. There's some survey data from Germany, Poland, and Sweden that suggests that over 40% of customers could imagine using fashion rentals. In parallel, you have companies like In Other Stories, Patagonia, Ray, and the French luxury department store Galeries Lafayette. They're all entering the fashion resale market. So, excuse me, clothing resale is actually forecast to have a tremendous growth potential in the future. H&M also recently launched repair and customization facilities across its stores in France, Germany, and Norway. So there's a lot of activity there. So what do you do with all this information? We have some tips for you, some kind of high-level tips on preparing preparing for entering the EU recycled apparel market. So the first one would be to look actually at the websites of all those companies that we listed on previous slides. I believe this presentation will be shared so you can access those links and kind of try to understand what type of recycling they're involved in, what type of business models they're promoting, and what type of apparel aesthetic they have. Think about starting producing clothing that is durable and that has a higher resale value. Consider producing clothing from recycled materials and fibers, especially the leftover materials from your production sites. Think about the scrap materials that you generate as part of your production process, as well as any unsold inventories, and think about how you can reuse them in clothing or home textiles production. Ideally, you would need to provide innovative and eye-catching designs for this new apparel and textiles, but even just using those materials is definitely a plus. You can contact the leading brands with whom you already are collaborating to ask about the opportunities in recycled fashion and to get in touch with the companies that are already known for recycling to understand whether you could become a supplier. Consider focusing exports on the top 6 markets. So you have Germany, the Netherlands, France, the UK, Spain, and Italy. These are the biggest apparel markets in Europe, but also think about maybe smaller but very extremely environmentally conscious markets that we see in Scandinavia. To learn more about the circular economy, visit the Ellen MacArthur Foundation initiative for making fashion circular and read about the different projects and strategies for reducing textile waste and improving recycling. And read the research publications of the Mistra Future Fashion. But also feel free to go to the CBI website and read the recycled fashion papers there and additional information that it has. That's all for me, so I'm going to hand it over to Franz.
Thank you, Kasia. Just a second. So thank you, Kasia. You already quickly mentioned the role of the EU in this market trend, and also highlighted a number of companies. Well, actually, the role of the EU and also of national governments is they are a major force in driving the demand for recycled fashion. So I would like to quickly highlight how that plays out. So perhaps you've heard of the European Green Deal. This is a comprehensive set of policies to reduce net greenhouse gases in Europe by at least 55% in 2030 already. And yeah, oh, I see I'm not sharing my webcam. You can't see me. Sorry about that. And now I can't see the presentation. So, and the goal is to make Europe the first climate neutral continent, actually. So one of the focus sectors for the EU is textiles. And what we see is that the European Green Deal is very ambitious set of policies to make this come about. And it's actually an umbrella term for several different policy initiatives, including the new Circular Economy Action Plan, and many of and also the Sustainable Products Initiative, several initiatives on introducing extended producer responsibility schemes, the right to repair for consumers, and also other policies regarding due diligence and a new carbon border adjustment mechanism. So many of these policies, they are still in the works, but companies should expect such legislations to come into effect in the very near future. So for instance, the Circular Economy Action Plan first came into effect in 2015. There's a new version. The first version contained many voluntary measures to promote sustainable design, production, and consumption of consumer goods with a focus on garments and textiles. The Sustainable Products Initiative is another initiative aims to make producers responsible for providing more circular products. It's also about sustainability labeling and disclosing information about production to consumers. It also aims to prevent unsustainable production processes, including the use of harmful chemicals in production. And it's also about the banning of the destruction of unsold durable goods, including textiles. One other policy that I mentioned is the introduction of extended producer responsibility schemes. And you see this on the European level, but also on a national level. For instance, in France, in the Netherlands, and in Sweden, and perhaps also in the near future in the UK, such EPR schemes are being introduced. And the idea is that the manufacturer of the products, they introduce a levy on the retail price, goes into a fund out of which innovations can be funded. So if you would like to know more about the European Green Deal, because as I said, it's like an umbrella term for many different policies, I would like to refer you to an excellent study actually on the CBI website. It's called the EU Green Deal. How will it impact my business? So if you would like to know more, I would like to refer you to that study. Just very briefly about another interesting trend, and this one's especially interesting for workwear manufacturers. What you see is that many national governments, but also municipalities and semi-government organizations, they are working on sustainable public procurement. So you need to think about raising the standard for recycled contents in contracts, in tenders, and also in contract management for workwear, for instance. And one nice example is the Dutch Ministry of Defense, which already in 2017 awarded contracts to companies guaranteeing up to 36% recycled content in the garments and textiles. And what's interesting here is that part of the recycled content comes actually from the Ministry of Defense itself. And they signed an 8-year contract and the volumes were quite high. So this can be actually quite interesting for companies to look into. either directly or via importers or brands in Europe. So that's all about EU and national governments and new policies and public procurement. And I would now like to give the word to Giovanni.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Giovanni Beatrice, and I'm one of the owners of Forward in Fashion. And I advise a lot of international companies, manufacturing companies, but also EU-based companies. And I train them, and I work as a strategic advisor also within the recycling industry. So next slide, Frans. So where's the opportunity in this? We have a lot of waste which we are struggling with, and a lot of chemicals are being used in the industry, as Kasia already explained. So what does it mean for a manufacturer in a developing country that only makes a ready-made garment? Where's the opportunity? First of all, waste is has a kilo value. You know, waste is worth almost nothing because there is not much purpose for waste. A lot of the waste is still incinerated, and what you see is once we start manufacturing new products made from apparel waste, that the price becomes very competitive compared to virgin material. And second, on the chemical side, well, I always urge the people that say, well, we follow customers' requirements, to think about what your own requirements are. It's the future of your children that you need to secure, and it's not about business here. It's about the future of each and every one of us. And solutions already out there that will make you commercially very strong, and let's discuss them. Next slide. So just a little bit more on circular fashion and some statistics. There's a lot of water in apparel manufacturing being used, and luckily more and more organizations are recycling the water and taking out the chemicals, or initiatives from governments are there to support the industry from recycling the water. So that's a good thing. Better, of course, is to use less water. And in case of recycling post-consumer waste, this waste, if it's being turned into new products, is not being dyed. So use the colors the waste already has, which reduces the water substantially. Dyeing, same thing. We don't dye recycled, a lot of recycled materials. Again, so it also saves a lot on the chemicals used. We have a problem, and the problem our industry that we are all working in, but how can we turn this problem into an opportunity? And that's where France has mentioned the European Green Deal, which be forcing the industry to change. Non-negotiable. Everybody needs to take responsibility for the EU waste, but also creates the opportunity for all the manufacturers that are manufacturing for the EU market. Next slide. So what is circular fashion? Everybody always thinks it's about secondhand clothing and turning it into a t-shirt into a new t-shirt and reselling it. Of course, that's the ideal scenario. And for some product categories, we are ready. Knitwear, for example, we can go up to a percentage of 85% post-consumer, recycled post-consumer waste. For denim, we go to a percentage of approximately of 35% of post-consumer waste recycled. So we have product categories that that can be made out of post-consumer waste already. And what we also see is an automation of the process, where before the selection of second-hand clothing was merely done manually. We see the pictures of the India women, for example, selecting just by touching and knowing this is wool and this is cotton, and then all the trims are removed. But there is also some investment in automation, and especially the Netherlands are very strong in the innovation in this industry. There is a machine that can already identify the different materials in the post-consumer waste and pick and select. So if we look at the traditional supply chain setup, we were always looking towards a vertical setup. We manufacture, we deliver, and that's it. Yeah, that's a vertical supply chain setup. Now, we have variations on that. Design for making sure apparel clothing are being used longer. For example, the North Face is collecting secondhand garments to use the opportunity the increasing sales on the secondhand market have. Same for Tommy Hilfiger, for example. They collect clothing, they repair clothing, and then they resell it again. So what does it mean? They collect in the EU, and then what? We are not capable of reconditioning everything and repairing everything in the EU. So we will look for more price aggressive alternatives. Think about shipping everything to Morocco or Tunisia to being repaired and then resold again. So, but that means that these manufacturing countries need to prepare for goods coming back and reconditioned. And then, of course, the ideal setup is we design for circularity, which means we deliver our goods at the end of the life cycle, we take it back, we manufacture them in Tunisia, we deliver, we take it back to Tunisia, we recycle, and then deliver again. That's the circularity we all are working towards, which in some cases we are already doing, and we predict that with the support of the Green Deal, within the next couple of years, it will grow massively. Next slide. So, of course, it's better to prevent than to solve. We have too much waste. People buy too many products, and it's ridiculous, honestly. And we throw away too much, too easy. So we first of all need to design products that are easy to recycle. If we mix materials like cotton mixed with polyester mixed with wool, those are difficult to recycle. 100% compositions, 100% cotton, 100% polyester are much more easier to recycle. That's where the industry needs to start changing their strategy. But what we also need to do is we need to understand that we build collections 6 months in advance and then push the market into buying what we think the market wants to buy. That is actually a very old-fashioned way of selling our products. We need to focus more on what the market wants. So that's something we need to change, and there are some innovative solutions for that, which we will discuss later. We need to convince the consumer to invest in products that do not only survive one season, that have a rest value that can be sold or that can be used for a couple of years instead of only one season, which also results in reducing the fast fashion, which is really a push strategy, surprising the consumer every month with new styles and seducing them to buy more than is needed. So we need to reduce the fast fashion industry also. Next slide. So what does it mean for the manufacturer in a developing country, for example? Well, first of all, you need to be flexible. Don't focus on the big volumes, the vertical supply chain setups. Try to think about circular setups in which you are fast and are more capable of producing what really the market wants. Service the market by taking back and start to recycle or refurbish. The second-hand market is a big market, so this service requirement from the EU market will grow. Set up a flexible manufacturing supply chain. The more flexible you are, the more you will see you will reduce the impact on the environment. Next slide. So what about chemicals? We use a lot of harmful chemicals in the industry, and please do not make the mistake that you as a manufacturer of ready-made garments are not responsible because you buy the fabrics, you don't make the fabrics. That is not the real life scenario. The buyer will hold you responsible for your supply chain. And that's why it's so important that you know what is happening in your supply chain. And Rachel will tell you later about how to do that. So the chemicals that are being used in the fabrics you are using you need to know, and there are environmental friendly alternatives. ZTHC is one of the leading companies on environmental friendly chemicals that you can use to replace the harmful chemicals. But you can also focus more on organic cotton. You can source sustainable materials. Santanderina in Spain, I always like to mention that company because they're so revolutionary on recycled yarns and fabrics. And it's your job to start sourcing these materials and start offering your customers. And you might think, yeah, but my customer is not requesting it. But if you look at the development of recycled polyester over the last years, you know, the PET bottles that are being turned into yarns and fabrics, the demand currently is bigger than the supply. Yeah, so this will happen also with recycled post-consumer waste, yarns and fabrics. Yeah, and within the next couple of years. So make sure you source those environmental friendly materials. In the denim industry, you already see big developments, Genealogia, laser treatment, Fashion for Good is an organization that can cover you with new innovations to reduce the environmental impact. It is your job just as much as it is the buyer's job to make sure the impact is being reduced. Don't wait for the buyer to ask you. Make sure you go out and source the right materials. Next one.
5 minutes. 5 minutes, Gio.
Okay. So we have three ways of recycling. We have upcycling, turning one product into another one. We have recycling, turning a t-shirt into a t-shirt. And we have downcycling, which is currently happening a lot, turning a second-hand t-shirt into car insulation, for example. So these are three different solutions, how you can also start your recycling process. Next one. Okay, this is the story that Kasia already told. Different materials in the supply chain have different characteristics. It's difficult to recycle post-consumer waste because the end product does not always comply to the expectations. That's different for cutting waste, for example. So focus on all, not just on one. Next one. So we have three ways of recycling. We have physical recycling. That's my favorite one. It doesn't involve water. It doesn't dye stuff. But we also have chemical recycling and thermal recycling. Three different ways to recycle. And you definitely need to investigate not only what does it exactly mean, but also what company is already doing what and what can I use to offer to my buyer. Next one. So recycling challenges, meeting market requirements. What's the solution? Downcycle or diversify. Yeah, meeting customer expectations. Sometimes we need to educate the consumer. You cannot have the same expectations for a recycled product compared to a virgin material product. Blended materials, difficult to recycle. We need to educate the design industry to focus on 100% compositions. Waste transport, we do not want to ship our waste to India to be recycled, then buy the yarns and ship it back to the EU again. We need to find solutions nearby the market. Next one. So one nice example I always like to mention is the company Wolcott. It's a Dutch family business. They really have some commercial materials ready for the mainstream industry. They have their own factory in Morocco, and they are urging their customers to start collecting the waste, shipping it to their manufacturing facility, and then turning it into new fabrics and trims. They make fabrics for suits, they make fabrics for t-shirts, they make fabrics for interior materials, and actually that is the most easy way to start the recycling process is collect your waste, post-consumer waste, and turn it into products, for example, in the interior, carpets, curtains, where the standards are a little bit different compared to the apparel industry. Next slide.
Thank you, Gio. So our last presenter, Rachel Kanagieter, will. Sorry, Gio, it was the end of the presentation. Can you see the next slide?
Yes, I can. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much. So our last presenter is Rachel Kanagieter from Rethink Rebels, and she will tell us all about measuring impact in your supply chain. I would like to, before Rachel starts, quickly like to mention again that if you have any questions about the presentations or on other issues regarding recycled fashion, you can use the questions tab, and then you can post the questions there. So we will try to answer questions during the presentation and We can also highlight some questions during the live Q&A session after Rachel's presentation. So Rachel, I'll give the floor to you.
Thank you so much, Frans. So yes, I'm Rachel, or Rachel, for who can pronounce. I'm the founder of Rethink Rebels, which is a circular impact consultancy. And our goal is to accelerate circular fashion by empowering fashion professionals through our services. So we have over 20 years of professional experience. We work with a team of about 10 people, and we currently help a lot of brands and retailers and factories. Next slide, please. So we'll talk about measuring impact, and before we do that, I would like to share some of the partners we're working with. So we're not only partnering up with NGOs, but also with universities, certification organizations, and so forth. Some of our customers, retailers, national retailers, but also international and global brands, such as PF Concept, which is a promotional industry player. Next slide, please. So our services, it's existing into these three pillars. Sustainable strategy. What we will learn is that a lot of brands and factory owners or fashion professionals, they find it hard to tackle, okay, where should we start? Because sustainability and circularity is huge. So what we start with is to really make like this gap analysis and see, okay, where's your goal? Where's that dot on the horizon, and where do you want to go to? We create CSR policies, materials and tools, because we're from the industry. We know what buyers need, what product managers need, what salespeople need, what marketeers need, to really communicate the message and really understand it, because sustainability is a team effort. It's not just an effort of one CSR person. It's a collaboration. Our circular projects then involve circular strategies, design projects, and products as a service models. So we're really going and think together with the client. Okay, what is fitting your business, what is fitting your strategy, and what is really also belonging to your core values. And then, of course, transparent communication is very important. And here where you see is measuring impact is crucial, because if you do not communicate transparent, of course, you see a lot of greenwashing. Today, about 59% of global fashion brands are greenwashing. It's getting messy, it's getting blurry, and people don't understand anymore. You know, you're getting distrusting behavior, so we don't want that. So what we do fact-based driven, scientifically driven impact measurements, and that is called LCA, life cycle assessments. And there we measure the environmental impact of a product or of a process. So today I will show you how we do that for our customers with some 3 case studies. Next slide, please. So if you want to communicate transparently, and if you want to convey your message out of your core values, you want to really show that it's not just like a nice layer sustainability, but it's really something that's embedded within your culture, then oftentimes first step is the strategy, and the next step is really look at your supply chain. So we investigate the supply chains of our brands, of our retailers, and of factories oftentimes. And oftentimes buyers work a lot with agents and with forwarders, sometimes directly with factories. However, then it stops. Then the information just is blurry, messy, we don't know. And from due diligence regulations, it is important that brands and retailers take responsibility of what is happening in their supply chain. So brands now are responsible for potential risks on social and environmental level throughout the whole supply chain. So if you want to know what potential risks are in your chain, you need to have a traceable supply chain. So that's how we help our customers. We go down, we talk with manufacturers, we talk with agents, and really try to map out the supply chain. Next slide, please. So what we do with Agri, for example, Agri is like a family company over quite some years, I think 75 or 100 years already, a family-owned company in the north of Netherlands. They produce biking gear as well as rainwear, and their mission is to get as much people on the bike with sustainable produced garments and products. So they want to contribute to personal health, healthier climate, and livable cities. And they asked us to help them with their future-proof sustainable sourcing plan, because they notice, hey, a lot of shifting. We notice, of course, a lot of prices are increasing. There's delays in delivery times. Transport costs are rising. So how could we tackle this in a sustainable way that fits our strategy, that fits our mission? So we already started one project with them to measure the environmental impact of their undyed rainwear collection. So they have a regular virgin rainwear collection, which is dyed, and they have an undyed recycled collection. And now we're actually measuring with life cycle assessment the impact of those improvements. And the next project we start now is the sustainable sourcing plan. Next slide, please. So why have they initiated this project? Well, they want to, of course, focus on company growth, and the sustainable sourcing strategy will support that. They have a need for a more transparent supply chain, so throughout the complete supply chain. And I think manufacturers, you are playing a big role, because if you already help your brands and your retailers to proactively already discuss that, then you're thinking along with your clients. And of course, they also want to benchmark their current sourcing practices, and how are the agents and forwarders adding added value. Also, of course, vendor consolidation, which is a big part of what brand owners are currently looking at. And can they gain efficiencies? Because oftentimes sustainability is also about cost reduction. For example, if you reduce or have a paperless office, then that is also reducing your costs in paper and as well in environmental impact. Next slide, please. So the scope of this project with Agri is to define a long-term sustainable sourcing strategy. And first of all, we start with making a baseline. So what is happening right now, right? And how is their buying process happening over all the departments? They have several buyers, they have several departments, everybody doing it in their own way. They want to streamline that, and they want to make it like a global plan. So we will review their global sourcing strategy on a vendor level, so tier 1 and 2 included, and also look into vendor consolidation, fabric nomination, and capacity planning. We will review the agent performance. Do they deliver added value? We will have in-depth interviews with them. And we will also review, advise, and make a risk analysis on the social and environmental potential issues that are in their supply chain. And that is, of course, because of all the because of their mission, because of their strategy, but also because of changing consumer habits and regulations. Next of that, we will look at their current purchasing procedures and processes. Is it efficient enough? Buying frequency. Can we make more agreements with the vendor to do it more smarter for both of us? MOQ management and so forth. And we do that. First of all, the first step is having a kickoff at Agri with all the buyers that we already have. Now we have prepared this survey, and it's just being sent out to all their agents and key vendors to understand the current situation. And I understand you're getting a massive load of surveys already. So we made it as short as possible, as concise as possible. to really understand the business and how important is Agri for that vendor. After that, we will review the outcome of the survey and set up one-to-one meetings with the vendors and the agents to really understand the business and to see where we can make improvements. Next one, please. So our approach, this model you've seen already earlier, but now it's really about the buying and sourcing strategy. We approach it very systematic and pragmatic. Data collection and analysis. We will set up this survey, interviews, and the ESG survey, which is environmental, social, and governance topics that will be included. We will do a country risk analysis as well as a vendor risk analysis. So we will review all the audits, so the third-party social audits from BSCI, Schmetta, or SA8000, analyze the results, define recommendation, make an action plan, and report and present the results to the customer. So what can you do with this information? That's on the next slide. Yeah, thanks. So it is so important. What we notice a lot is that vendors or agents, the first reaction is like, okay, why do you need all of this information, right? It's, are you cutting me out, or won't you need me anymore? It's completely the opposite, because we need to collaborate even more closer with vendors, with agents, with forwarders, and a complete supply chain to make this change happening, right? So more sustainable change, but as well a circular change. This is very important to collaborate. So what I recommend is really to share information about your supply chain and your partners to really open up, because this will really enable clients to be very transparent in the communication, to measure impact. So for example, with the undyed rainwear collection, we are missing some specific information. So we can work a lot with general information, data, which is already out there. However, the more preciser information we have about that specific facility, for example, energy use during a water or washing process, or energy use, the more better we can help the client and eventually, of course, the customer, and be as transparent as possible about that. So really also work together with your brands towards a more sustainable supply chain, and ask what their focus is, and yeah, and also have that conversation. I can really recommend to have third-party social audits, and it really doesn't matter a lot, in my opinion, if that's one of those. We always advise our customers, okay, if they already have BSCI, that's fine, you know, just work with that, because we should not have like this overload of audits and certifications. Certifications are important to avoid greenwashing. Unfortunately, it has come to a point that only certifications are more or less trusted. When buying, for example, recycled polyester or recycled cotton or organic materials, because we need to prove that as well to the consumer market. So measure impact during processes and actively communicate about this. This is also really important. If you have like this unique process where you reduce water, you have wastewater collections, you reuse that again, this is important information. If you have solar panels or reducing energy possibilities, already communicate that, because that will give you a competitive advantage. Well, reduce waste wherever you can, and reuse it. If you have the waste, if you already have like this patterns that are cut it out as efficient as possible, then maybe you can think along with the customer, hey, we have this waste, we could create this and this product for you, so you can communicate that, and you can sell something extra, the customer can sell something extra, and it's just a story that also fits the brand purpose, and also your purpose. So also think about, hey, what is our goal in this whole process. So actively think along how to recycle wasted materials with the customer. Actively train your employees in safety, health, and labor policies. Very important. Now we notice there's a lot of focus on environmental impact. However, the social part should never be forgotten. It's so important that we have employees working in safe and healthy environments. So also actively train your employees, collaborate with local NGOs. They have amazing training programs to help you with that. Measure your carbon dioxide and invest in renewable energy. Because a lot of brands had the European Green Deal that have been discussed before already is a fact, and all the companies have clear goals. Well, most of the companies have clear goals on 2030, carbon neutral, even earlier. So this is really important that it's going throughout the complete supply chain. Also look into policies on waste, recycle management, and ESG policies. So environment, social, and governance. All right, next one. Yeah, so another customer, another client case, Top Cleaning, which is a professional textile cleaner here in the Netherlands. So this is some images of their facility, a part of their facility, and they have asked us for their help on mapping and calculating the sustainability and economic benefits of professional cleaning over home washing of professional clothing. Of course, this is very important for them because is it a benefit as well time-wise for clients who can of course afford that to have it professionally cleaned, but also environmental advantages. We are also checking the financial benefits, including the lifespan of the garments, because as you understand, a professional clean washing machine or chemical cleaning installation will I say that increase the lifespan of garments, and of course communicating these potential benefits to increase market share. This research is still under development, so I cannot share you any of the numbers, but hopefully in the next few months that will be shared. Next one, please.
5 minutes, Rachel.
Yes. So TechSet is another. It's another customer. It's a corporate wear company in Belgium. They are part of the New Wave group in Scandinavia, and they have this amazing head office with a robotic warehouse. You can see the middle picture. And here we gave also one of our trainings about environmental impact measurement. If you go to the next slide, please, I can share a little bit more details. So we have developed this environmental impact course with Ritik Rebels and Natasha van der Velde, who is one of our experts. She's LCA PhD from Technical University in Delft. And together we developed this training to calculate your product or process footprint step by step. So it is possible for everyone to do this. Of course, one person will be more into it than another, but it is possible. It's not impossible. You have to hire this agency who can do it. Of course, we can do it as well for you, but it's also important to understand that it is also possible to do it yourself, to add value and at the same time reduce the environmental burden. So what is nice, of course, is that you will understand how can we reduce the environmental negative impact and add more value to the products. So if you're interested, you can have a look at our websites. Some testimonials, well, we can go over that to the next slide, please. And here we located in Amsterdam, in the Netherlands, as well in Thailand, where is our sustainable sourcing office. So thank you. If you have any questions, please let me know.
Perhaps, Frans, I can ask one question, Rachel, which is related to your side of the business. Out of the chat, it's actually one of the only questions asked, and you also touched upon the answer, but I will still ask the question. When blockchain is not the norm, how will the audit of value chain in the ecosystem of the fashion labels will be justified? So I think they mean that when blockchain is not a tool that is used in the value chain, how can you measure true impact and create without using blockchain?
Yes, thank you, Giovanni. Of course, blockchain is an amazing tool. It is. I also did some research into that, and it's really beautiful because what blockchain basically is, it encloses information at each part in the supply chain, right? So it cannot be manipulated. It is locked in the system, and each tier or next step or next producer will say, yes, I received this information, this is correct, I checked it, boom, and it's in the system, and then it's locked. It cannot be manipulated by one person or one organization. However, if you do not add in the correct information from the first step in blockchain, everything is also blurred. So I would say blockchain is not a solution, it's more like a tool. And if you use that tool wisely, it is beautiful. I don't think it's the only solution to have transparent communication. You can first find the information and then also have that third party checked to have that certified, or either with the ISO or whatever. So yes, I think it's once again a beautiful tool. It's not the only tool, but it's one of the tools, and I think you should really check if that is the way to go.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. That was the only question that was asked. The other questions are just general things. So thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Gio. I have one more question actually, and perhaps if Kasia and Gio and Rachel, you can turn on your camera, then I can stop showing you the slides and we can perhaps answer this next question. So the next question is basically, what do you consider the main barriers for increasing the market share of recycled fashion in Europe faster? Is it demand or supply? Is it quality? Is it logistics? Is it maybe costs? What do you consider the main barriers to speed this whole process up?
I think it's standards, Frans, because first of all, the consumer expects the same level of quality for recycled as for virgin. And second, it's very difficult to comply to the REACH standards if you recycle products. So standards need to change in order to make a recycle more mainstream.
I would like to add to that. I think it's also a big part in certification, that how can we really trust if it is really recycled materials? So then oftentimes we're looking into certification with the added cost and also the price. It's oftentimes 15% more expensive. So is that possible within the whole business model? And that is something that we always talk about. So we advise brands and retailers, we make a roadmap for them, and to really make a planning on, okay, how are you going to get more sustainable materials, and what are your KPIs in the coming years, so that it will be done.
Rachel, one quick question also from the group. If we talk about certification, what are the most common product recycle certifications out there?
Yeah, oftentimes we see GRS. GRS is one of the most known. You see OCS, RCS. That is oftentimes also what the public knows.
Okay, thank you.
So thank you all. So, Gio, there's no more questions in the question tab that needs answering that haven't been yet answered.
No, all has been answered. Yeah.
Okay, so in that case, I would like to thank the presenters and the attendees for joining us today and all for your contributions. Again, I would like to refer you to the CBI website, that's cbi.eu. There's a lot of background information on recycled fashion and also on other niches in the fashion market. And as we already mentioned, this webinar will be is recorded and it will be shared also on the cbi.eu website. So for your review or for sharing it with others. Thank you again for joining us today on behalf of our entire team, and I wish you a pleasant day.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.